Let's dive deep into one of the most misunderstood aspects of K-pop and East Asian culture: beauty standards. There's this frustrating narrative that keeps popping up, especially from Western audiences, claiming that K-pop idols are just trying to look more Caucasian or Western. But here's the truth. This perspective isn't just misguided. It's an oversimplification that ignores thousands of years of cultural history. Think about the comments you've seen online. She was so naturally pretty, and now she looks like every other Asian girl trying to look white. Or, why do they feel like looking Western is better? It's easy to jump to conclusions when you don't understand the deeper cultural context, but these statements reveal a serious lack of awareness. East Asian beauty standards have been around for centuries, long before the Western world even knew what K-pop was. To reduce these long-standing cultural standards to a mere attempt to look Western is not only simplistic but also incredibly disrespectful. Let's take a journey back to the Tang Dynasty, a period in Chinese history over 1,000 years ago. Poetry from this era, like Wei Zhuang's famous line describing the beauty of Jiangnan girls, her slender wrists as pure as snow, highlights that fairness of skin was highly prized. This isn't just about skin color, it's about a long-standing cultural value that has evolved over time. The idea that East Asian beauty standards are somehow a modern phenomenon influenced by the West is not just wrong. It's an erasure of the rich history behind these standards. The preference for fair skin in East Asia is deeply rooted in class distinctions. Historically, lighter skin signified that someone didn't have to work outside exposed to the sun. It was a marker of wealth and status. This preference for fair skin has nothing to do with wanting to look Caucasian. It's about centuries of social structure and cultural evolution. But let's not just focus on skin color. Another common critique is that East Asians, particularly in K-pop, are altering their features, like getting double eyelid surgery, to look more Western. Again, this is a gross misunderstanding. While it's true that double eyelids and larger eyes are often seen as desirable, these preferences are not about mimicking the West. In fact, even in ancient East Asia, larger eyes were admired. The golden ratio, a mathematical concept of proportion, has been used to define beauty across different cultures, and East Asia is no exception. It's important to recognize that while these beauty standards have deep cultural roots, they can still be problematic. The pressure to conform to a narrow ideal can be damaging to self-esteem, and it's not just an issue in Korea or East Asia, it's a global problem. The Western world isn't immune to this either. Just look at the slim, thick trend that's been sweeping across social media. It's promoted as a healthier, more attainable body type, but let's be real, it's just as restrictive and damaging as any other beauty standard. In fact, the Western obsession with body image has its own dark history. The early 2000s saw the rise of heroin chic, where being dangerously thin was glorified in fashion magazines and on the runway. This wasn't about health, it was about meeting an unattainable standard that left many young women battling eating disorders. The parallels to the strict beauty standards in K-pop are hard to ignore, but the key difference is that these Western critiques often come without the same level of cultural understanding. And this lack of understanding leads to harmful generalizations. The idea that K-pop idols are whitewashed, or that they're trying to look Western, is not only inaccurate, but it also ignores the cultural pride that many of these idols have in their heritage. Taking, for example, the practice of skin lightening in K-pop, some Western fans see this as an attempt to look more Caucasian, but in reality, it's tied to traditional beauty ideals that predate Western influence. What's really at play here is a deeper, more insidious issue: colorism. The preference for lighter skin isn't just an East Asian phenomenon, it's a global one, tied to classism and anti-blackness. In many cultures, including in the West, darker skin has been associated with lower social status, while lighter skin is seen as a sign of wealth and privilege. This isn't about trying to look white, it's about societal structures that have existed for centuries. But let's not just point fingers at East Asia. Western beauty standards have their own set of problems that are often overlooked. The rise of gym culture and the pressure to be slim-thick has led to a new wave of body dysmorphia and unhealthy habits. Western beauty ideals, just like those in K-pop, can be incredibly difficult to achieve and maintain. The difference is that Western audiences often fail to recognize their own biases when critiquing others. And then there's the issue of representation in Western media. How often have we seen Hollywood cast Asian actors who fit a very narrow stereotype? Simu Liu, who starred as Ken in the Barbie movie, faced backlash because some people didn't think he was attractive enough to play the role. But this criticism wasn't just about his looks. It was a reflection of the narrow standards that Western media often applies to Asian actors. It's the same reason why many Asian celebrities who are considered attractive in the West wouldn't necessarily be seen that way in their home countries. Beauty is subjective, and it's shaped by cultural context. But here's the thing. While it's easy to critique the beauty standards of another culture, it's much harder to do so with empathy and understanding. It's essential to recognize that every culture has its own set of ideals, and these are often tied to complex social and historical factors. It's not about whether these standards are right or wrong. It's about understanding where they come from and how they impact the people who live under them. So the next time you see someone comment that a K-pop idol is trying to look more Western, take a step back and think about the bigger picture. These beauty standards didn't just appear out of nowhere. They're the result of centuries of cultural evolution shaped by social status, historical events, and yes, even colonialism. But they're not about mimicking the West. They're about something much deeper. And while it's important to critique harmful beauty standards, let's do so with a full understanding of the cultural context. The pressure to conform to an ideal, whether in K-pop or in Hollywood, is a universal issue. It's something that affects people all over the world, regardless of race or nationality. But we need to be careful not to impose our own standards and biases on others. Recognizing our own biases is the first step toward a more meaningful conversation about beauty standards across cultures. In the end, beauty standards are a reflection of the values and ideals of a society. They tell us a lot about what a culture values and how it views itself, but they're not static. They change over time, influenced by everything from social movements to economic conditions. So instead of judging another culture's beauty standards, maybe it's time we start asking why these standards exist in the first place, and how we can work towards a more inclusive and diverse definition of beauty. It's easy to get caught up in the aesthetics and forget the human impact. These beauty standards, whether they come from Korea or Hollywood, can have real, lasting effects on people's mental health and self-worth. That's why it's crucial to approach these discussions with sensitivity and awareness, recognizing that beauty is not just skin deep, it's a reflection of cultural identity, history, and social structures. So the next time you find yourself critiquing a beauty standard, whether it's in K-pop or your own culture, take a moment to consider the broader context. Ask yourself where these standards come from, who they benefit, and how they impact the people who live under them. Because at the end of the day, beauty is more than just what we see. It's a window into the soul of a culture. If you found this discussion thought-provoking, don't forget to like this video and subscribe for more deep dives into the cultural nuances of K-pop and beyond. What do you think about beauty standards in K-pop? How do they compare to those in the West? Let's continue the conversation in the comments below.